This is BBC News. You're watching our BBC News special here today on International Women's Day. Now, we are going to look at Sierra Leone next. And my next guest is going to be the first directly elected mayor of Freetown in Sierra Leone. That is Yvonne Aki-Sawyerr. Now, she has made it a point to campaign for climate change in the country. But being in politics in Sierra Leone, let alone a woman in politics in Sierra Leone, is no easy feat. And that was the subject of a new Africa Eye BBC documentary, which documented that difficult struggle to power for her. Now, I want to show you a moment that illustrates that perfectly. And that was the moment that her own headquarters was under attack by tear gas and bullets while she was inside the building with her daughter.
Come on, quickly! Guys, get down, get down! My daughter has asthma. Abiola, can you hear me? Abiola, we need help.
Now, she joins me now. Thank you so much for your time. I just want to ask straight away about that moment that we just saw, the context to that attack and what you were thinking in those moments.
Good morning. This was the day after the election, and there had been a press conference called at the party office, and collation was going on of the results, both the presidential and the mayoral results. And as you can see, we were the subject of tear gas and gunshot attack. And I guess what I was thinking at the moment, at that precise moment, was just the safety of everyone there. In addition to my daughter, there were a lot of young people who were on my team. I think in those moments, all you think about is, how can we make sure this stops? And yeah, it was frightening, but thankfully, those on that floor were saved. Sadly, a retired nurse who was a volunteer with our party, who was on the ground floor, lost her life, and she was a woman.
Yeah, and we do detail that story in the documentary. Yvonne, I also want to ask, because what you're describing, that experience is particularly harrowing. And yet you've lived a different experience. You worked in finance here in London. I wonder what your takeaways are about how different it is to operate here in the United Kingdom versus going back to serve your country.
Clearly where you have situations where, politics is more, shall I use the word intense, where there are situations where the force of the security or the security forces, their interventions are perhaps less predictable, less contained. It's very different. And then certainly, I think finance and politics, two different worlds. Living in an industrialized, developed country where you're contributing to an already big GDP, as opposed to serving in your own home country, which is developing, where you have the opportunity to directly impact lives through policies and interventions and actions. Very different, but I would say the latter is more rewarding. And I mean rewarding
Yvonne, the UN has said
rewarding from the perspective of, you're making a difference to lives in a very, very direct way. And that counts for a lot.
Right, and in terms of that difference, the UN has said that women are affected twice as much by climate change as men are. Why did you choose to make that a focus of your work?
I grew up in a very natural environment. My father was a professor at the university, and just behind our home, we had the botanical gardens. So I grew up with a love for nature. And when I saw the level of deforestation, the environmental degradation, and the impact it was having, it really moved me. And it moved me to action. And that was coupled with sanitation challenges that the city was experiencing in a really, really dramatic way in 2016, 2017, at the time that I was there post the Ebola outbreak. So my initial entry point was one of almost looking into the situation, but once I started to work on it,
Yvonne,
and saw the impact on women.
Apologies, we do have to leave it there. I do apologize, but we do have to leave it there. But I do want to point to the documentary which follows your journey as well as your climate work. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us on International Women's Day.
Thank you for having me.
Now, looking at Iran, mixed gender